Hi, everybody, and welcome to our new Teacher Education and Professional Development webinar series. Our goal is to bring JWEL members, the MIT community, and guest speakers together to talk about best practices around teacher professional development. Just as a heads up, these webinars will be recorded and they will be posted on our JWEL website for people to watch. Thank you for attending today's session, and I'm very pleased to introduce our guest speakers. Today from Davidson Academy, we have Dr. Stacy Hawthorne, who is the Director of Online Learning, and Dr. Jessica Potts, the Online Curriculum Coordinator and Humanities Instructors. Thank you guys for being here today.
Thank you, Kirky. I'm going to go ahead and start my screen share for everybody. I've got the slides here, and we'll start with an introduction from Jessica and myself. And then folks, Kirky, can everybody see that and it looks good? Perfect, thank you. So we are here today to talk about sharing our approaches to professional development for teachers. As Kirky mentioned, I'm Dr. Stacy Hawthorne. I'm the director for the Davidson Academy Online programs. My dissertation was in online teaching and specifically focusing on gifted education in online classes. I've been with the Davidson Academy for about 6 years. I started as a consultant that was hired to help them develop this online program. And after a couple of years, they decided to hire me, and it was great because I was doing a lot of consulting for a lot of schools. And if anybody here has done consulting before, you know that that means a lot of travel and a lot of late nights. And there's no job that, if you're going to do a good job, that you're not going to work a little extra. But when you're working for yourself in consulting, it's a ton of hours. And so this was a great passion project that I loved working on, and have been thrilled to be here as the director for the last 4 years. Jessica, you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. I'm Jessica Potts. I am a humanities teacher here at Davidson Academy Online, and I'm also the curriculum coordinator. And that means I get to work really closely with our team of amazing teachers. I get to design curriculum with them and for them. I get to do observations and complete trainings with them. And I've been with Davidson a long time, since 2009. I started at the Reno campus, and I moved to our online campus when it first started up in 2015. My dissertation was on online education and gifted education, that blend. So the move online allowed me to merge those kind of disparate interests, and I've been able to put my research to great use here at Davidson.
Thanks, Jessica. All right, so a little bit about the Davidson Institute and the Davidson Academy. This webinar is not trying to sell you on us, mostly because we're a nonprofit and we don't really have much to sell, but just so that you know who we are and where we're coming from. The Davidson Institute was founded in the late 90s by Bob and Jan Davidson. They are philanthropists. They for those of you that are my age or a little bit older, you may have heard of some early educational software called Reading Blaster and Math Blaster. My kids played with it. They're now in their mid-20s. And that was the brainstorm of Jan Davidson, and that became a really profitable software company that they eventually sold out and decided that they wanted to become philanthropists with that money. And since Jan was a teacher, they made a lot of their money in education software. They spend a lot of time looking at the education community and trying to figure out where can we give back? Where are there a large pocket of underserved folks? And they found that gifted education was traditionally funded in schools. Some states have laws that they don't have to provide any gifted education. Other states have laws that they have to identify gifted kids, but then that's the end of it. And then other states have provide services and identification. And so they really wanted to create a nonprofit to support gifted students and their families. And out of that grew the Davidson Academy. I'm not going to read the slides to you because I'm going to assume that you guys can all read. When we decided to build the Davidson Academy's online campus, which they actually built because they wanted to serve more students, and the limiting factor of our Reno campus is people had to move to Reno, Nevada to be able to attend that campus. And as amazing as Reno is, not every family can pick up and move there. So they wanted to build an online campus that was of equal quality, but provided a really robust experience for gifted students online. And Jessica was part of the team early on, and we developed 6 core values These are things that we do in everything in our online courses. Every course should have these 6 core values demonstrated somewhere. And I'm just going to briefly share them because I think as you hear Jessica and I talk, we didn't do this on purpose, but you'll hear these core values are embedded in our professional development. And so it's just really interesting as we were putting this presentation together, we're like, wow, we actually do our core values in our PD, and because it's just the way that we approach education and working with humans. So our courses should be rigorous, they should be personalized, they should emphasize critical thinking, have opportunities for rich discourse, collaboration, and be super flexible. And so as you hear us talk today, you can see if you see elements of those 6 things coming through. So there was an early exodus, mass move to online learning, back in March of last year when things started to go awry with the pandemic. It was necessary. The timing of that couldn't have been better for us because for us, it happened during our spring break, and our online staff spent their entire spring break helping our Reno campus staff who are used to teaching in a traditional building learn enough that they could go to what we call remote operations. We actually don't call what they do online learning because it's not as deliberate, as planful, and as research-based as what we were doing. We really just needed to get them online and be able to try to maintain where they were at. But there's an interesting study from Kinsey and Company that really talked about, and they did this in June 2020, which is why I think it's super interesting. But they talked about 3 levels of online learning that might be coming up. They talked about a virus contained level, and that was, hey, in-class instruction resumes on fall 2020 because the virus was contained. They talk about a virus resurgence level, and that causes some school closures intermittently, randomly throughout the US throughout 2020-21, but in-person instruction fully resumes in January 2021. And here we are, January 2021, and we're in what's the 3rd level of their prediction in June 2020, which is pandemic escalation. The virus is not controlled, and schools are operating remotely still, probably for a good part of 2021. And there are schools all across the country that are going to be in remote operations for this entire school year. Some of the structures of professional development in a brick and mortar can transfer over to an online learning situation, online professional development, but some of them are not possible. And we know this because you look at some of the best performing online schools and you look at schools that were really high performing in-person schools and how they transfer, how that high performing in-person school went online isn't really replicating the best online schools. Things that are hard to do, in-person events, conferences, those things that people are used to being traditional ways to get professional development are not available. At Davidson Academy Online, we call it DAO, we think that anything's possible. We've actually had online dances that students love. They're super popular. And so we look at everything like, wow, how do we make this better? And you'll hear some of those examples today with Jessica and I. Some things are actually better in a virtual space. I actually personally, having chaperoned my fair share of middle school dances as a teacher, think online dances are way better. I don't have to worry about who's touching who. I don't have to worry about what's in the punch bowl. And I certainly don't have to, I can turn the music down when it gets too loud, or I don't particularly care for a song. But lots of things can be improved in virtual spaces, but not everything can be. Some of the things that we've found that can be improved are our observations, our course reviews, and some workshop kind of things that Jessica will be talking about as well. All right. Oh, sorry, I think, yeah, let me make sure I'm where I'm at. All right, yep, that's everything I meant to talk about on this slide. I just got talking and forgot to flip the slide. So I'm gonna stop now, and it's definitely Jessica's slide next. Sorry about that, folks.
Okay, thanks, Stacy. So we thought our argument was really important to put up front. And I know this argument might seem crazy at first, and Stacy already touched on this a little, but we're going to do our best to try to convince you. And we believe that the flexibility and personalization of online teaching environments does allow for really collaborative and teacher-led professional development opportunities, perhaps more flexible and more collaborative than are possible in brick and mortar schools. So rather than taking your entire staff and trying to stuff them in an auditorium for a multi-hour, one-size-fits-all presentation, Online professional development allows us and teachers to group based on need, based on experience, based on what the teachers are interested in learning. It also allows us to create very hands-on and authentic trainings, and these trainings allow for a lot of collaboration. It lets us space the professional development out throughout the year, so we don't just have a big chunk of professional development in the summer. It becomes continuous growth. It becomes part of our school culture. However, we do have to ask ourselves why professional development matters. It takes a long time to do professional development right. Those of you who have led professional developments know that it takes a lot of time and effort. So it has to be worthwhile. So for us at DAO, professional development is not a matter of checking boxes or fulfilling mandated requirements. So our school utilizes high-level content, and it's vital that our teachers have the same level of pedagogical skills to go along with it. We also believe in having high expectations for our teachers during the professional development process. We have high expectations for our students, so it only makes sense that we extend those expectations to our teachers. And our teachers take a very active role in the professional development experience, and they're expected to apply what they've learned to their practices. However, we also believe in meeting teachers where they are and letting them bring their own personality to their teaching. So we're offering strong personal development opportunities, continuous support from the administration, and we're also really avoiding any kind of scripted or cookie cutter curriculum for anything that we do, and that includes professional development. We want our teachers to have the tools to be at their disposal, to be their best selves every day, as opposed to just doing exactly what we ask them to do, or doing things for just a small period of time in regular observation type of environments. Back to you, Stacy.
Thanks, Jessica. All right, so we do trainings in a variety of formats. So one of the first types of trainings we give a new instructor is post-hire. So our school year, we actually run on, as a K-12 school, we actually run on a university calendar. It's part of the law that allows us to operate as a public school for gifted students, which means we run to about 16-week semesters instead of a 180-day calendar. So our school year starts at the end of August. And then the winter break starts early in December, and then school starts back again after Martin Luther King Day in January, and spring semester ends in the middle of May. Even though we don't start until the end of August, all of our new teachers usually have a July 1 start date. For a couple of reasons. One, that's obviously very helpful for teachers that are on contracts that typically end on June 30th. So we all like to make sure we're employed over those summer months. But we do use that time to do a really extensive training program. And Jessica, it was key in developing this. There is a training course that all of our teachers go through, our new teachers go through in our learning management system. It takes place over the summer. It's 7 weeks long. And they are actually learning how to do all of the things we expect them to do with their students. It's hands-on, and it's authentic, it's collaborative and interactive. They're having synchronous live sessions with Jessica and the other new instructors. And there's things that they're working through throughout each week. And each of those modules, the feedback is phenomenal. The teachers that go through that course, really feel like it helps prepare them for being successful, working with gifted students and teaching online. We do tech trainings ongoing. We actually have a large group of teachers who are tech friendly. They're like tech ambassadors. We'll let anybody provide any type of training that they want. So this summer there was a spontaneous teaching teachers tech on Tuesdays or something like that. We came up with some horrible acronym with lots of T's and tried to make it mathy. But it really was a group of teachers that were trying to learn new tech skills, wanted to have a get together each week. We're all locked down, let's get together on Zoom, even though we don't have to, and share those things. We also do a lot of tech trainings and other types of trainings during our staff meetings, which we'll talk about a little bit more. But we really want to make sure that we have professional developments that's ongoing, and we capture the enthusiasm of our staff members and allow them to have a participatory role in our training. It may look like a typo that the word curriculum is struck out on this slide, but it's actually not a typo. When Jessica and I were putting this together, I was really reflecting back on some of my experience having endured professional development as a teacher. And I had to go sit through every time we adopted a new curriculum. I'd have to go sit there, 2 or 3 or 4 days of training from the curriculum company, and they would tell us all about their curriculum and things that we had to do. We don't actually do curriculum training. Departments will collaborate and work on things, and you'll hear from one of our teachers in a little bit later, talks about how she values that. But we hire teachers who are experts in their content area, and they are experts in gifted education, and we don't expect to be the ones to tell them how to teach their content. We offer, proofs-based math courses that go well beyond multivariable calculus. I'm not going to be able to teach, our PhD in math or our PhD in philosophy, more about philosophy or more about math than they already know. And so we really let them be the experts when it comes to their curriculum. And we're looking for a variety of other things and how that curriculum is delivered. We also do a lot of mini workshops, and I love this slide, this picture, and I love this picture for about 15 years. It says, when I hope I die, I hope it's at a faculty meeting or in service, because the transition from life to death would be so subtle. I've been in those meetings, and when I had the opportunity to develop a new school, a new online campus, it was, let's not make it that school that I worked at before, that I've been to, that I've sat through. You're actually going to hear from a teacher at the end of this presentation, which I know I just noted. Her and I talked together years ago when she was finally fed up with her current career. She called me and said, hey, do you have any recommendations? I'm like, I would love it if you would work here. And so she went through the interview and got hired. But one of the things that I remember about her is we were middle school teachers together. There were 3 middle schools in the district, and they had an in-service on differentiation, which I will never forget this day. They had all the middle school teachers from all 3 middle schools. So there were probably, 200, 250 of us in, brought us together in the cafeteria of one of the middle schools. If you've ever taught in a middle school or a high school, you know that they have nice little, these had the round pods, stools for you to sit on that were attached to the lunch tables. We were expected to sit there for 8 hours as adults and sit through a presentation that was 153 slides on differentiation. So 200 adults sitting in cafeteria tables for 8 hours watching the exact same slideshow on differentiation. And I was like, does anybody not see the problem that's happening right here? And so I was at that meeting, and I remember thinking to myself, the transition from life to death would be very subtle right now. And it would be less painful, I think, in the long, at least in the short term. So we don't want that, and that doesn't work. I mean, honestly, all I can remember is the number of slides, the topic, and nothing else about differentiation from that day. We want to have little mini workshops that are embedded throughout the year. They're teacher focused. Oftentimes they're teacher led. They're immediately applicable to what folks are doing in their classroom, and they're short and effective. We do training on special education services. We do trainings on gifted education. We do feedback surveys, just like most universities do every semester. We just got our feedback surveys back from last semester in January. Jessica and I went through the numbers. One of the nice things about having a doctorate is you learn a lot of statistics and a lot of how to use SPSS. So we took all of that data, plugged it into SPSS, looked for areas where we found some statistically significant differences. And Jessica did a 15-minute session on how to improve this area, because we found some classes that had differences on it. So it was really relevant to what we're seeing in our classes. And then we really want teachers to take the time to share their expertise with each other. So we don't want them to die during our staff meetings.
Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about our course reviews now. Like Stacy said, we don't do curriculum training, but we do find it useful to do course reviews. So we do larger, maybe more intensive course reviews before the semester begins, and then we'll do some smaller course checks throughout the school year. We found out fairly early on in the school that the way that the students navigate through all of our courses needs to be standardized. So we have challenging content in our school. There's no reason the students should have to learn to navigate each of these courses differently. All of the content in the course should be unique, and it should be designed specifically for that cohort, but the feel of the courses should be recognizable and comfortable across the entire school. So a committee made up of teachers and administrators determined which of those navigational and informational things should be standardized. And then we adopted that standardization plan about 3 years ago. And it's made an enormous difference for our students. They're able to navigate every single course. We have much fewer issues when it comes to navigation. And it's also given teachers who are designing courses really clear expectations about what their courses should look like and why. And again, these elements were decided upon by the teachers. So they got to say what was valuable for them in their courses. But with that standardization came the need to check for the standardization. So when a new class is created, someone on the administration team or design team, usually me, will work through the course as both a student and as a teacher. So we can see what the students see and we can see what the teachers see. We check every link. We look for clarity in navigation. We check to make sure that everything is working the way it should and it looks the way it should. And then I would give the teacher or the course designer detailed feedback on each of the sections. So some feedback's only recommended, like teachers can make aesthetic choices, they can personalize, they can do a lot of things that's just for them. Some feedback requires change though, because either the navigation isn't working properly or something is missing or the students are struggling with some aspect of navigation. So the result here is that the courses are 100% ready for students long before the semester begins. So again, a lot of work goes into this, but it's well worth it. We also do spot checks on courses throughout the year. So the reviewer, and again, it's usually me, sometimes counselors will drop in, they'll drop into the weekly folder that the students are moving through. So most of the students, or most of the teachers group their units by folder. So we'll have like a week 1 folder with all of the information in it, a week 2 folder, and so on. And I tend to do these reviews, and the reason I do them is the same reason that writers need an editor or a workshop. It's always better to have more eyes on your work. So I can catch smaller issues that weren't caught the first time. I can take a closer look at the curriculum. I spend a lot of time just giving kudos to our teachers, telling them what a great job they're doing. Counselors can also ask me to do a spot check on a class if students are reporting issues. So it's a really good way to catch potential problems early on. It's also a good opportunity for me to become more familiar with the curriculum, in places that I wouldn't normally be as familiar with, and that lets me do my job better elsewhere. The process is time consuming because we have just under 60 classes at DAO each semester, and along with checking all the syllabi and the courses before the semester begins, I also do about 30 spot checks per month. However, getting that quick feedback is really useful for the teachers. They can make the changes without having larger issues down the line. It's also useful for the counselors who work with the students, and since the checks help with standardization, they're useful for students. So an example of where professional development actually trickles down to the students. Next slide, please. Thank you. Next, I'm going to talk about observations, and this is where I think online professional development really shines. So along with course reviews, the admin team also completes classroom observations, and we strive to get each teacher on our team 2 observations per semester. New teachers might get more observations if they need more observations or if they request more observations. Veterans might only get 1. And impromptu observations might be necessary if a problem arises, but we really shoot for that minimum of 1 observation per semester, and we've been able to achieve that over the past couple of years. And I believe that online observations are the biggest improvement over brick and mortar practices. So all of our observations are conducted using Zoom recordings. So that means I'm not dropping into a live session. They're completely unobtrusive to the students and teachers. And as the observer watching the video, I have the ability to pause the recordings, to repeat them, and if things are going beautifully and I get permission from the teachers, to share them with the other teachers to use as another point of professional development. The observations are also teacher-led, like most of our practices. After doing a lot of research over a summer, I created our observation rubric, and it focuses on the seven competencies there that are on the slide. So the teachers select the competency that they would like me to observe, and then they send me the link to the recording for the classes. Now, letting the teachers select the recording after the fact, after the class is already done, it does a couple things for us. So first, we're able to quickly problem shoot if necessary. So the teacher knows something went wrong in the lesson, they can get immediate feedback, and they can immediately change their practices. It's also far less intrusive and more authentic than in-person observations, since the teachers can't do any special preparation or student coaching ahead of time. We basically eliminate the Hawthorne effect, since we get to see how teachers and students really work together on any given day. So once the teacher has selected the recording, they also select those 2 competencies from the rubric that they'd like me to focus on. So one of them should be a strength competency, and this gives them a chance to shine. So it's something they're great at, they want to show off a little bit. The other should be a competency that they'd like to improve upon. And as I watch the recording, I'll write down evidence of the competencies, I'll write down areas of strength, and also suggestions for improvement. I'll then leave them with some global feedback. I'll describe and encourage their standout practices and give them a summary of goals that they can immediately apply. I also offer to meet with them in person and go over their feedback together, like in a Zoom meeting. Now, allowing teachers to lead this process allows me to focus on being flexible and personal as a coach. It gives the teachers a lot of agency in the process. And it's also important to note here that the observations are not evaluative. So teachers don't receive scores on their observations, and Stacy only follows up with them when it's absolutely necessary. The observations truly are a coaching tool for us. And in the years since I've started doing them, I've seen noticeable improvements in our teachers' pedagogies, suggesting that we're doing something correctly as a team. Back to you, Stacy.
Thanks, Jessica. Yeah, and I want to, Jessica, you mentioned that you do the observations, and one thing I realized when you talked about it and just typed in the chat, we didn't cover early on. All it's from the design, from the beginning when we started our online program, all of our core courses have 2 90-minute live sessions in Zoom each week. So their teachers are talking to the students are talking to each other. They're really designed for the opportunities for collaboration and rich discourse around the content. Those 90-minute sessions are not 90-minute lectures, because we don't want our students to die during our classes from boredom either. So they're going to watch something, read something, do something before they come to live sessions so they can interact. And so that's what Jessica's watching with those observations. It's not a teacher giving a lecture for a period of time. We talked earlier about doing a lot of training as soon as somebody's hired and they are able to come on board almost 8 weeks before classes start, but we provide continuous coaching throughout the year. PD isn't an event. It's not a one-time thing. It's not somewhere that you go and visit and you go home and then you're done with it. PD has to be embedded in everything that you do all year so that you do see that continuous improvement. So we do the formative feedback, which is those observations that Jessica talked about, those course checks that she talked about. We do training based on the student surveys and feedback, some of the mini workshops that we talked about. Those pieces are all those feedback surveys and the observations from Jessica. Those are all non-evaluative. It's just feedback for the teacher to understand, hey, this is what I'm doing well, this is what our students are perceiving what I'm doing differently and where I might need to make adjustments. I break that data down to them so that they can see scores from class to class. So they can say, okay, here's how my 3 history classes scored against the other history classes. Here's how the history department as a whole scored against other departments. Here's how I as a teacher scored against other teachers. And so it really gives them a lot of different ways to slice and dice it and say, okay, this is where I can make an improvement in this specific class on this specific standard that we really want to hit. We are the most collaborative, close working group of people I have ever worked with in my entire life. And we are actually, for the last year, have never been in the same building. And even when we are, in normal operations, only about half of us live in the same place. So we have teachers that live across the US. We have one that lives across the globe. And we use Teams and video staff meetings to collaborate every single week, every single day. I can pop on and ask a question, somebody's going to get back to me. Anybody can pop on and ask a question, we're going to get back. We use Teams all the time. And we actually have a presentation that we've done at a couple conferences called Working Remotely Doesn't Mean Working Alone. And I've never felt closer to the group of people that I work with. And some of them I've actually never seen in person. So it's kind of interesting. We also do, not only do we use Teams to connect with each other, we have a research channel on our Teams where we share the latest research in gifted ed or in our areas, and we start conversations around that. So we have lots of asynchronous communication, and oftentimes we'll talk about that research in our staff meetings as well. And one of the things that we do that I really think help builds a sense of community is, in any organization, it's the 80-20 rule, where you spend 80% of your time on 20% of the issues, 20% of the people. We get, like any school, we have families that are more likely to email and call about certain issues, but 80% of the folks we don't hear from very often. And sometimes those folks will send me an email and say, wow, this is great. I really like this. Mrs. So-and-so did that. Dr. So-and-so did that. And I take every one of those, I take the student name out of it, and I post that on our staff team as a shout out to that specific teacher. So for example, I had an email this weekend, over winter break, from a parent that said, it was a new family. And she said, at the beginning of the winter break, we were excited about a 4-week winter break after a tough semester. And after 2 weeks, all my kid does is say, when can I go back to class? When can I go back to class? Because they miss their teachers and their classmates so much. And so I took that, I copied and pasted it, put it in our staff team, and said, hey, shout out to all of the teachers that teach to these teachers, and here's an email from that student. And so the teacher doesn't necessarily know which student that email was from that parent, but they get the recognition. And I make sure I keep a checklist to make sure that everybody's getting recognition and they feel valued and a part of the team. One of the things that I highly value, and this goes back to hiring professionals that are experts in their field, is we encourage a lot of creativity. I've worked a lot of places. I've seen lots of, scripted curriculums, do this, every classroom has to do this. We want things to be personalized. We want them to be flexible. I want my teachers to be creative. That's one of the main reasons that observation that Jessica does is non-evaluative, because if people are afraid that everything that they do is going to come back in a performance review or end up in their personnel file, they're less likely to be creative. When I was doing consulting, I worked with a group of teachers in one state, and at the time that state had a provision in state law that if the state test scores were low for X number of years, I think it was 2, for a particular teacher, they could pull your license. And so those teachers were not trying to innovate. They were doing exactly what they were told to do because they were so worried about losing their license. And if you've got a teaching license, you put a lot of hours and a lot of money into that, and you don't want to start a new career. When the stakes are high, people don't want to be creative. I hire great people, and I want to make sure that they have the opportunity to be creative. I tell them all that time, try it, try this, try that. We're often in betas. We're in a beta test right now with Class EDU for Zoom, because we want to try that new piece of software, and we know that it's full on beta. It's not really vetted, but we want it to be part of the people that are trying that and providing feedback. And so I want them to try new things, and if it doesn't work, stop and adjust quickly. But if it works, stop and share, and keep going on. So we really want to encourage that with the folks, which is why they really enjoy being a part of Davidson Academy.
Okay, now we get to talk about teachers collaborating with other teachers. And this is the element of professional development that comes directly from the teachers. And that's our emphasis on collaboration. And our collaboration is both departmental and interdepartmental. So our departments meet at least once per month during our staff meetings. So our staff meetings vary. Sometimes we do trainings, sometimes we learn about new tech, and sometimes we get to meet as a department. So here, the teachers will get a chance to compare notes, to share what's been working for them. They can problem solve together. Departments will sometimes have impromptu meetings outside of our staff meetings, especially if they need to norm practices. Like every now and then, the English department will get together to norm our feedback practices, or if they want to test out a new piece of technology together. Like they may just jump on Zoom together and see how a piece of technology works in real time. And each department has its own team on Microsoft Teams. We love Teams. We basically live on Teams, and teachers check in there regularly. They ask questions, they share resources, they just chat. As a humanities teacher, I'm a member of the humanities team, and that includes English, history, and also world language. So our world language teachers jump in with us. And since we're all aware of each other's course loads, we'll often tag each other on resources that we've run across or might be useful. So if we've seen an article that we think a history teacher is going to think is interesting for their class, we'll put it in that team and tag that teacher. And I've gotten so many good ideas from my colleagues. And it's also just a great place for support and encouragement. We're each other's best cheerleaders. We also encourage interdepartmental collaboration, both during our meetings and on teams. So teachers from different departments will often team up for focus groups, like we were talking about with the standardization group. We had one to determine what our late work policy was going to be. So groups of teachers came together to decide that. We might collaborate for conference presentations or maybe for support when completing certifications and trainings, because our teachers are always wanting to earn the next shiny badge. Our DAO staff team, which is another team on Microsoft Teams, it's a very lively place. So we share ideas, we ask questions, we post resources for one another, and we also do a lot of socializing there. And I'd argue that building those social connections and camaraderie is key, especially for teacher-led professional development. Because we like and trust one another, we're all very willing, and some of us are even very eager to share ideas with each other. Back to you, Stacy.
Thanks. One of the things that we like to do is we like to attend conferences and webinars, and we like to present at conferences and webinars. And this is actually a picture of us, several of the staff members. We went to a conference in February of 2020. And this picture is both, a great evening out after we've been at PD together all day and participated in the conference. Nobody had to go out. We all decided that we would go out together. It's also a very poignant reminder of before COVID and after COVID, because 2 weeks after this picture was taken, lockdown started happening. And so it's just interesting to see, the smiles and everybody happy here at an event in Austin, Texas, and then the world changed shortly thereafter. So I wanted to put that in there to say that. But live conferences whenever possible, but so many folks are doing online conferences. We offered a webinar series for free this summer to help teachers learn how to teach online and using our skills, trying to present. We feel like you give a lot to the community when you present at conferences. And then when we go to conferences virtually or online, our staff shares that when they come back. So I've worked at districts before where the district would pay for one teacher to go to the conference, and that person went and they came back and there was never any sharing out of that. And so that's not a really good investment on that school's part. So we do ask that folks that go to something share something when they come back. Our summer webinar series was a huge hit. There are pieces of those videos online on our website if you're interested, and they were created by our teachers really, and it was completely free just to say, hey, here's a way to give back to the community. So in addition to all of the other things that we do, conference and webinars are a huge part of our professional development plan. And Jessica, did you want to talk about these, or was I talking about these? We asked our teachers for some feedback on their PD program, and literally we put an anonymous form out and said, hey, Jessica, and I need your help with some homework. And there are no extensions. We have a deadline, and these are what teachers said to us when they could type anything they wanted to in an anonymous form. So I can't tell you if the teacher that said these things has been here for a long time or a short period of time. But is there anything you want to highlight out of these, Jessica?
Yeah, so we got the teachers to tell us what they think. It was completely anonymous, so if they could tell us anything they wanted. And these are the kinds of things that they told us. So I'll give you a second to read through these. And you can see that some of them are very recent. We just did a mini training last Friday, which was really fun. And the teachers talked a whole lot more than I did because they got to share all of their best practices. And this one here at the bottom, I think, is really useful to point out. This is clearly from a teacher who has been in the industry for a while and never received the kind of training that we offered. So we wanted to make sure that the trainings were very authentic and the teachers were ready to go on day one, that they felt comfortable on day one, and that the courses were being taught in our style of teaching, so they could come to expect, know what to expect from our from our school. And here's another set of quotes. I'll give you a second to look through these. And you can see here that the teachers are really valuing being able to make choices when it comes to their professional development. So it's not a one size fits all, it's not cookie cutter, it's differentiating. That's something that we preach in gifted education. And rather than having all of the teachers at all their various experience levels go through the exact same training, we try to make sure that it's specific to those teachers and we give them exactly what they need. And hopefully we do it in a way that's efficient and is very respectful of their time. Move on.
The reason we put this slide in here is, Jessica and I spent, 30 minutes sharing our perspective and how we think things are working. And then we obviously shared some quotes that gives you the staff side of things. And the reality is somewhere in between. And so we wanted you to be able to have an opportunity to hear from one of our teachers. She is a first-year teacher with us. She has taught 20 plus years in her career. At the middle school and high school level. She joined us in July and went through the training program. So she is both very knowledgeable in her content area and has had 20 something years of professional development to compare and contrast to the 6 months that she's had with us. So Jessica, if you hit advance one more time, it should play the slide.
Whether you're looking at professional development from a traditional brick and mortar perspective or an online perspective, I think if we sat down and tried to define professional development, we'd all come up with a fairly similar definition of what the ideal was. What I think DAO does an exceptional job of is adhering to the integrity of that definition, that ideal for professional development. When I was asked to comment on my experience with it, there were a couple of things that popped into my mind right away. The first was the idea of the relevance and authenticity. We don't have a meeting because it's Tuesday, or we don't have a theme of the month type of a meeting. Our PD is thoughtfully and purposefully planned out. And related to that, it's relevant to the audience. We do have global concerns where we meet as a full staff. And obviously those are things like our technology updates, pedagogy, particular student populations. But a lot of our PD is handled departmentally or in interest-specific groups. It's also as needed and flexible. We don't have a plethora of standing meetings. As things arise and as needs are identified, we plan accordingly. As an educator, from my perspective, obviously I appreciate the respect of my time, the efficient use and respect of my time. I think that's important in creating the climate and the culture that you want to have in a school. But also the professional respect, the idea that professional development isn't done to me, it's done in response to my needs and with my participation. That's an important thing too. And I think that sort of leads into the next category of thought that came to mind when I thought about professional development here at DAO. I would characterize our professional development as sort of a constant collaborative and job embedded. Obviously, there are administratively initiated professional development opportunities, and that's logical. You would expect that to be the case. But even those, there have a high degree of flexibility and staff participation. But much of our professional development is more what I would consider informal. Much of it is staff initiated or staff led. For example, we have some tech talks in the summer where some of our instructors who happen to be the tech wizards present new topics that they've learned, or they offer to do tutorials. And we also have something, and I think this is unique to an online community, we have what essentially to me is this ongoing asynchronous staff meeting via our Teams chat. We look at our Teams chat on a daily basis, and it really becomes a forum for discussion. People post articles on gifted research, for example, or they might post a particularly successful strategy that they used in their room, or maybe sometimes it's the flip side and they're asking for help with a particular topic. And what happens is those postings tend to morph into opportunities for that informal professional development. And you start to see a group of people, hey, let's meet on a Zoom and let's go over that strategy, or let's talk about that article. The other nice thing about the Zoom meeting is that it gives us an opportunity to talk to people that we might not normally talk to. Generally, you see your next door neighbor in a traditional school, or you see your department or team members, and then there's this whole group of people that you never see. And online, that's not the case. Those walls are kind of broken down. The last thing that came to mind was an important one, and something that I think is very different here from what I've seen in a traditional setting, and that is the normalizing of feedback. Our PD really mirrors what we want to see in our classroom. You know, as educators, we talk about, well, I want my classroom to be focused on the needs and the interests of my students, and I want to differentiate, and I want to encourage this ongoing conversation, and I want to see collaboration. And the idea that feedback isn't about a grade or a score or points. And this is something that was really new to me. Feedback is a discussion, it's a conversation, and the goal is ongoing growth. That's true of how we approach it with our students, and that's true of how it's approached with us as instructors. So and we have traditional observations like you would in a typical school, but instead of the end result being, you earned a 5 or a 4, the end result is a discussion. There's feedback that's positive, there's feedback that's constructive. You talk about goals for your next opportunity, and it looks a lot different than what I think sometimes classrooms and professional development tend to resort to, which is, like I said, a grade. And I think those things are really what make DAO's professional development not only meaningful, but effective, and also something that kind of naturally continues in staff discussion. Thanks.
Yeah, so our goal is to get those two circles on that Venn diagram to overlap as much as possible. So we have a lot more area of reality and very few areas on the outside where we think one thing's happening and the staff thinks another's happening. And with that, we don't have any other slides to present. Jessica can go to our last slide, which is just the thank you slide. That we're not necessarily done. We want to make sure that you have an opportunity to ask questions. We're here to answer questions. You can type them in the chat. I'm assuming if it's okay with the MIT team that they unmute and ask a question, that's fine with Jessica and I. We're online all day, every day anyway, so we're good with this. And if you don't want to ask a question now, but do have something that you want to follow up later, that is our generic email address. It's online at davidsongifted.org. Jessica and I will both get that. Or if you want to email either one of us individually, it's our first initial, last name at that long Davidson Academy unr.edu. So S Hawthorne and J Potts, but online at Davidson Gifted is just easier. So we put it out there. So I'll be quiet. Any questions?
Thank you, guys. Yeah, so please feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions. We'd love to have them.
I do have a question. Thank you, Stacy and Jessica. I think at the beginning you mentioned we hire great teachers, and you list all of the competencies that you want to develop among teachers. So I was just wondering about implications when you hire. Would you, if you could tell a teacher education program school that it would be great for them to do something, what will be in that list of something that you will recommend them to have? So I'm just thinking about implications for teacher education versus professional development. I think this is great. A great program that you have, and it seems like, my which I agree with. My understanding is you want to continue to do this. It's not necessarily that you see gaps in when you hire, but if you could inform teacher education based on what you do, what will those things be?
I have one, and then I'm sure Jessica has one, or she can agree with me. But and I'm reflecting, excuse me, back on my teacher professional development experience. I remember I had to teach a math lesson. My university supervisor came out to watch me as part of that piece, and this was years ago, so I thought I was a super amazing teacher with technology because I used the projector and had slides as opposed to the handwriting on the overhead with the bright light kind of thing. And I bribed my students that I was student teaching with candy to behave when my university supervisor was there, because I could not possibly have any behavior issues in my classroom, because that would have gone against me. And I taught, it was me teaching, not me interacting with the students a lot of the time. I did occasionally ask questions and things like that, because it was written in my lesson to ask X question. And at the end of the period, I taught math. As all good math teachers do, I gave them 10 minutes to work on their homework and passed out the worksheet, which was, every math teacher should hand out lots of worksheets. These are all things that I've learned are not good over the course of my career. And I remember the students were all in rows. The teacher had it set up that way. And so I'd stand at the front of the row and I'd be like, oh, there's 5 kids here. And I would count out 5 worksheets and hand them down. The next row had 6 kids and I would count down. And I will never forget, the only feedback for improvement that I got from a university supervisor that day was that I would save valuable instructional time if I knew that there were 5 students in the first row and 6 students in the second row, and pre-counted out my stacks of worksheets to hand out and stacked them crossways so that I didn't have to stand at the front of the room and cross and hand them out. And that is absolutely the worst thing that you could ever tell. Like, that's not good feedback for improvement. For me, what I wish I'd known, and what I wish teacher pre-service programs do, is spend more time helping teachers find their voice as an educator. I think we spend a lot of time telling teachers how to do these things. This is good pedagogy. We've got to know that good pedagogy, because it's really important, but you've got to have the confidence to find your voice and to use that voice to engage students. So whether that's some kind of public speaking class, some kind of, personality, learning to connect with people, I didn't feel like there was a lot of learning how to be a human with other people. And I also would wish that we spend a little bit more time making sure that teachers were engaging students in what they're doing. A lot of what I learned, teaching is a second career for me. I have my undergraduate degrees in business and went back to be a teacher much later. So my teacher, even though I'm older, my teacher education program was only about 10, 15 years ago. So it's not even that old, comparatively speaking. So that's me. What do you think, Jessica?
Yeah, I think finding your voice is a really good one. And I think my recommendation goes along with that. I think adhering more to those coaching principles would go a long way in teacher education. So like with our observations, our teachers get the rubric ahead of time. They know that the kinds of things that we think make for excellent education. And then they get immediate feedback on the things that they're doing. They get to show their skills. We give them immediate feedback. It's more like a workshop where we can sit down and talk and have a conversation about things that went really well, and then things that could be improved upon. And I also think that in teacher education programs, the teachers should spend a lot of time teaching. Like, they should be doing things. So when I do my observations, math students should be doing math. English students should be doing English. So it shouldn't be the teacher doing a lot of talking. I want to see the students doing things. And I think the same thing applies in a teacher education program. A teacher, pre-service teacher, should be teaching constantly. And there should be that constant feedback loop where they're getting very immediate and immediately applicable feedback so they can make those changes for when they try again next week. Like, teaching all of the time. That's my big takeaway.
Thank you. Those are 2 great recommendations.
May I ask a question real quick? So again, thank you so much for this presentation. Something that stands out to me is that, again, the teachers that you described, the educators that you work with, seem to work very well in this environment with teams and find a way to like build that community. And I know that it's worth mentioning that for many educators that are not so familiar with this and sort of have had to become familiar with this environment over the last year, it's been a major shift in thinking. And I guess I'm wondering, how do you encourage folks that maybe are coming into this for the first time to, I don't know, embrace this sort of environment? I mean, even myself, I was guilty. I turned off my camera for the larger part of this conversation, and that's probably not what I should have done, right? I should have been paying attention and had myself present. But do either of you have any advice on what we could do to give advice to other educators?
Sure. I think, and this goes, I use this advice a lot with my consulting work in here as well, and teachers that we're trying to help. The big shift is a mindset shift, Joe, and that's kind of what you were hitting at. And what we're not trying to recreate a in-person schooling experience in an online format. We're creating a different experience. So we're starting from the ground up. How do we build a successful online experience? And if all I'm trying to do is make what I have fit what I used to have, I'm not going to be successful, and I'm going to run into some frustration. So really the best advice that I would give to somebody that had online learning thrust upon them, as opposed to voluntarily chose to do this as a profession, is to not worry about what you lost, but figure out how you can use what you have to make something special, as long as you have it.
I think when it comes to the videos as well, it's really weird at first, right, to be constantly looking at yourself. So the thing we always tell our students and our new teachers is you really have to get used to looking at your face. Like, you have to become comfortable with seeing yourself, and it's bizarre at first. And eventually you get used to seeing your own face and the way that you do things, and you become much more aware of yourself and comfortable with yourself. But I also think that new teachers online need to embrace flexibility. So we like things to be a certain way, and online teaching will break that really fast because there's something that's always amiss, whether it's something with the technology, or a student needs help, or like whatever. It's always going to be something. Maybe it's an outage somewhere, like an entire city has lost its internet, and that's happened to us before. So just knowing that things are going to not quite be the way that you plan them, and being able to roll with that. And then secondly, embracing transparency. So online teaching and online learning it's a very transparent place. Everyone can see all of the things that you're doing all of the time. And that's not said in a scary big brothery type of way. It's more like this is an opportunity to actually be a community, and to see everyone's practices, and to constantly share practices. So lean on your fellow teachers, like share what you know, and then accept the wisdom that they give you. I've seen a lot of really good support groups that have popped up online for teachers who are coming to online learning for the first time. And I think those really are some of your best resources.
I had a quick question around how you're dealing with like the hands-on element of learning, to add that to your classroom experiences.
I can speak to that. Our science teachers do an amazing job hosting on hands-on labs. So we use the company Hands-On Labs, and they ship the lab equipment to the students, and each lab will have its own set of requirements. Like, it needs these things, and some of them are in the box, and some of them are household goods, or it's water, or something. And they teach the students laboratory safety, and how to set up their computer and their cameras so everyone can see everything that's going on. And they actually do the labs together during the live sessions. Some of our advanced science classes, or advanced bio and our advanced chem, have extended labs that take place on Fridays. So they're 2-hour blocks. So they have more time to do labs. So our science teachers are very dedicated to having those hands-on experiences. In our other classes, maybe in our humanities classes, where there sometimes aren't as many opportunities for hands-on things, we do encourage the students to use like the Surface tool, where they can do drawing and writing. We encourage them to use any of the tools they would like in breakout rooms. And we encourage our teachers to use that as well. So our teachers do tend to use the surfaces to write, and to make things a little more tactile and hands-on.
The only thing I'll add to what Jessica just said is we don't provide technology for students. The one piece of tech, like we don't give them a laptop or anything like that. We make sure that everything we purchase is device agnostic. Everything that we use, it'll work on a Mac, it'll work on a PC. We do ask that they have a full computer, not that they use a Chromebook or something. Almost everything will work on a Chromebook, but some things, it's just not going to be as good of an experience. It can be a desktop, it can be a laptop. We're really deliberate about what we do, making sure that it takes as little bandwidth as possible and those kind of things. But the one piece of technology that we do provide every student with is an Intuos tablet, and it's just a little black tablet with a pen so that they can Bluetooth it or to their computer, or we plug it in with a USB and use a pen and write on that so that they can do their math and science writing. Our online teachers want to see their problem solving strategies. It's not, can I get an answer right in a multiple choice test? Can I type in the correct answer, using funky math characters? We really want to see their handwriting. So that's the one piece that we do provide with everybody. And I will tell you, the science piece and that hands-on piece took the most amount of research and development on our end to try to get it to work. So we feel good about where we're at. We've been through 3 lab companies along the way. And we're, like I said, constantly willing to try something new and fail forward. And so we feel like we finally found a good solution for that.
Thank you. That was a great question. Are there any other questions? Stephanie?
I had one more. You mentioned something you were piloting with Zoom, and I didn't quite catch what you said. Could you say more about that?
Yeah, so it's a new add-on to Zoom. I guess maybe add-on's not the right word. It's called Class EDU for Zoom. And it is the brainchild of Michael Chasen, who was the original founder of Blackboard. And as a parent now at home with school-age children, watching them attend class on Zoom, he said, wow, Zoom was built for businesses. It wasn't built for classrooms. There's all these things that classroom teachers do that Zoom won't do. And I can fix that. And so he has started the Class EDU for Zoom. To do that, you can go Google search it and you should be able to find the video. And they are releasing the Windows beta in February. The Mac beta is out already, although most of our teachers do have Windows, so we're waiting for the Windows beta, but it adds a whole bunch of features and we're super excited about being able to try it and hope that it works, because it'll be wow, this is going to be a lot easier. So things get easier as we go. So
Sorry, one other quick one. Have you ever used the multiple language feature within Zoom for global collaboration with your students?
I can't answer that question. We do teach Chinese and Spanish, and I'm not sure if they are using that in those classes. Do you have any idea, Jessica?
I haven't seen them use it. That doesn't mean they're not trying. Our world language teachers are fantastic and they love trying new things. So I wouldn't doubt that they've tried something like that.
We do. Our Spanish teacher is doing a collaboration with a school. I believe it's in Argentina, but it's in South America. So they're actually, I believe it's Flipgrid that they're using to communicate back and forth with that school. So
I think to your point, Stacy, if Zoom was done for business, I think the feature they have right now requires the same translator that you will have at a conference. So I wonder what the new solution for classroom will have as more of a live communication among people that are participating. So curious for that.
Yeah. And Claudia, you had a comment in there earlier that you wish you could turn off your video. I think Zoom does now have a feature on your end where you can say, don't show my video when I'm in a meeting, so that you won't see your own video. We do require that our students and our teachers all have their video on, that they're looking at each other and seeing each other. And we actually don't allow the use of virtual backgrounds. Not that because we hate them, but because as a public school, we really want to be able to make sure that we feel like our students are safe. We want to make sure that other people aren't nearby off camera, because we have to protect the privacy of the other students that are involved in that learning experience. So we don't want, a whole family watching a live session while other students are learning. You wouldn't let a whole family come into your classroom. So we tell our families that wherever that student is learning is part of our classroom. And so it needs to be a private area. It needs to be a safe area. We actually have had a situation the very first year, I don't even know if Jessica's aware of this, where a student was on video and somebody was trying to break into his house, and he was 16 or 17 and was home alone. And we had to make sure that he was safe. So we don't use the virtual background. We just tell people, like, get comfortable with your own face. We had a conference that we went to where somebody said, well, I'm not making this up, I wish I was. She's like, well, a lot of people start taking online learning because they're physically unattractive and they don't want to be looked at. And so how do you deal with that? And I was just like, well, I think we don't, nobody here, you know, we have people that look different. We're all different, and we have to learn to embrace that and just be comfortable with who we are. This is who we are, and that's way a-okay. So we haven't had a student ever complain about having to have their video on, but we're also very open. Before you enroll, you will have your video on. So maybe somebody doesn't enroll because of that. So now Claudia can't get back to see yourself. This way, nobody has to tell you that there's broccoli hanging out of your front teeth if you're looking at yourself, right?
Well, you can do it for a while, and then when you feel comfortable, then you can stop. And, you know, as I said, I now have to figure out how to bring my own video back. Thank you.
Anyway, thank you guys. This was amazing and wonderful, all the things you're doing.
Yeah, thank you both so much for being here.
Thanks,
Yeah.
everyone.
Thanks
you,
for having
Stacy,
us.
Jessica. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.